Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Defender Fitness Alliance show. First and foremost, thank you guys again for being part of the Alliance. Thank you all for the support, and please continue on to pass along the community what we're doing here and what we're trying to build. All right. So with that being said, I want to introduce our guest for this evening. He is an Army veteran. He is the co-founder of Project Echelon and the director of veteran relations. I want to welcome our very special guest, Eric Beach. Eric, first off, thank you for coming on the show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to now.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. And it's always a good opportunity to share kind of my story. It's a passion of mine, and it helps me go from where I was to where I am now and where I'm going. So currently, I'm a father, a husband. I've got two little girls, and triathlon has kind of been a big part of my life for the last 3 years, which it really did serve as the changing point for my own journey of transformation from suicidal to self-aware, healing, purposeful individual who is ready to serve others and give back. So that's where I am right now, I guess.
Awesome, man. So you kind of mentioned it. So how long did you serve, and how was the transition out of the uniform for you?
Yeah, smooth as butter, just
Yeah.
easy. But yeah, I was I signed up for 4 years. I ended up getting medicaled out after about three and a half, with one tour to Iraq in 2003 through 2004. And leaving it, it was weird because back in 2003, post-traumatic stress, these things weren't really something that we talked about.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of shame around it. And I think we've done a lot to get away from the shaming of it. But when I first admitted I had a problem because I was not sleeping, I was starting to hear voices because my brain was so tired. And that's when I finally went like, hey, this isn't right. Like, I'm not okay. And as soon as I did that, a lot of people who hadn't even deployed yet started coming after me, calling me weak and ineffective and broken and just a lot of nasty stuff. But,
Right.
ended up getting chaptered out. And when I left the military, it was a fractured identity is the way I describe it, because I went into the military hoping it would help me. I didn't know it at the time, but I was hoping it would help me define what a man was. And it didn't do that, because that's not what the Army's for. That's not what the military is really for. But when I left, I lost all of that and joined a peer group just to find some kind of connection, and did so into drugs and alcohol. So that put me on a path that really was not healthy, and it further confused me. And what I was thinking at the time was, the nightmares have stopped. I seem to be having more fun. I wasn't, in hindsight. I still was pissed off, and if I had whiskey, it just enhanced the emotion I was feeling, whether that was joy, laughter, whether it was depression or anger. It was intensified. So I wasn't happier, but I told myself, I'm more social when I drink. That's my peer group. And if I do cocaine, I stay up all night, and then when I pass out, I don't remember any of my dreams, even if I slept. So this is like the perfect cocktail, and that worked for a few years. Intermittently, I, kind of crashed and got to these depressed states, but then I'd sober up the next morning. I'd be on my floor being like, I'm going to tell someone I have a problem. And then I'd wake up the next morning and I'm like, well, maybe I don't have to tell them I have a problem. I'm feeling okay now, forgetting that, 5 hours before, I was in a pool of tears in my bedroom, not wanting to see anybody, and just really scared. And ultimately, that lack of connection of understanding myself and my purpose led me to want to go back in the military. That wasn't really possible at the time.
Mhm.
And worked menial jobs until it came to a head where I overdosed on drugs and ended up in my drug dealer's yard. And my roommate followed me, thankfully, in a car and took me to the hospital. And the police pulled us over. And I said I didn't want to wake up. I don't remember any of this. And then I woke up, in the ER for a flash, drinking charcoal, getting catheterized. And then I woke up in the psych ward, and that was kind of a transformative experience. It didn't change me, but it led to me waking up, and I had a police hold, and I had to go to court, and it was either 6 months of rehab or 3 months living under parental custody. And as a 22-year-old who had been to war, the idea of living with my parents didn't really fit my dynamic of what a man was. or what a warrior was. And so I chose to live with them. We moved away from that city, and that kind of got me cleaned up a little bit, but I still had those problems. And ultimately in 2008, I swallowed all my pills, wrote a note on my desk saying sorry, and planned not to wake up. And somehow my body got me up. I went downstairs, and my sister took me to the hospital, had my clothes on backwards, and again in the psych ward. And that's when I really decided something had to change. And that's when I met my wife, and I couldn't make some of those mistakes anymore, but
Yeah.
it didn't end there. It was, I mean, I don't want to go on too long before I get way tangenty, but that's what, kind of really solidified the change. And it wasn't better after that. It just started to make the lows level out a little bit and not be so severe. But I still had, I still struggled quite a bit before I found, athletic and fitness. I had no purpose. So that was, in a nutshell, my transition experience.
So it seemed like, I mean, I know you talked brought up a lot of issues, but it seemed like you kind of lost your way. You said it earlier. You lost your identity and your purpose, right?
Mhm.
So going through all these ups and downs, and with the alcohol abuse, with the drug abuse, how did you find your way back out of that darkness? Like, what, you mentioned that you met your wife. Was that like the starting point, or was it something before that that kind of led you to believe in yourself and be like, hey, I need to turn this around before, you know, I die?
Yeah, I think there is merit to that she helped me find myself. I was chasing women at that point. I was not in serious relationships. And when I got out of the hospital and kind of reevaluated some things, because that'll, wake you up. When I, had really attempted suicide in 2008, I decided that I wouldn't date anybody, and I would just stay with myself and just
Yeah.
figure that out for a little bit.
Just
And it
try to
was in
find
that
yourself
process.
first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started, and that's how I met Jenna. Was I think 4 months after I committed. Like that was my New Year's resolution, was to not date and to not go after any women. Then I met her without trying, and it was just different, and it felt different. And I was like, man, I'm in love. This is amazing. And we got engaged really fast, and we got married fast, and it was the opposite of what I planned to do. So in doing that, I did find it's not just me anymore. Like I do have somebody else that's got stake in the game. And yeah, I always
Mhm.
had my family, my mom and dad and sister. But when you're married, it just changed things for me. It didn't make everything better, but it kind of took that option off the table for a while. So it was ultimately when we were, I can't remember how long into the marriage, but I went to film school in Kentucky, and it was leaving that environment of our safe home with everything small town and kind of going to a southern state and in a bigger city near Lexington, and getting into school, and then finding that I kept having this pull to get back into the military or go to be a police officer, firefighter, anything kind of paramilitary, and knowing that wasn't an option because we had a child and we had a second on the way. And my wife was like, I don't want you in that environment. And I kind of was upset with her at first, but I was like, okay, I got to get creative. Like, what do I miss? Do I miss the military? No, I don't really miss getting up at 5 a.m. for PT. I don't miss that. Like, I don't crave that, but maybe it's the physicality that I miss. And so I decided triathlon was one of those things that had always been in the back of my mind, like I wanted to do. And so I was like, let's do a triathlon and see if that physicality can help me feel like I did in the military. And that was probably the biggest turning point, is starting that journey and rediscovering my physicality.
So, like, what led you to, I guess, triathlons? Like, was that just like out of the blue, this is what I want to do? Or was this something that you had interest in before, years before?
Yeah, I did. It was a curiosity before I joined the military. And for some reason, my mom remembered that. And when I got out of the military, she bought me this book, How to Do Your First Triathlon. And I was like, cool. And I put it on the bookshelf, never read it. I still haven't read it. I don't know where it is, but it replanted that seed. And so years later, I was, wanting to do it I was in a really bad place. I was in an environment that was really weird. I'm, 20, I don't know, 25 at this point, and I'm in college with freshmen that are 18 and hadn't been to war and didn't really understand. And it was just weird. And I wasn't in the dorms and I was alone and met a guy who had done an Ironman. And I was like, Ironman, I don't even fully understand what that is, but triathlon, like that, yeah, I remember wanting to do that. And so it was kind of the looking up to somebody who had done it that reminded me of an old passion that I had. And that was my process.
So with that triathlon, how long have you been doing that?
I've been doing triathlon for 3 years.
Okay. And just talking about your nonprofit, how did that come about with the project Echelon?
Yeah,
Did that come through just with you doing the triathlon and meeting other veterans,
yeah.
or?
It's interesting because I was just reflecting on this the other day. And so I didn't have money for a triathlon. I didn't really have money for a bike and all the gear that you kind of need. It's an expensive sport if you want it to be. But what happened was I needed to find a way to make money to afford the entry into a triathlon, even a $70 entry. And so I started blogging about it. Like I'm gonna try this, and I need to save myself, kind of an attitude. And then I had a friend, or my wife did, whose husband is a professional cyclist, and so he knows all about running, collegiate All American runner, and then now pro cyclist. And so my wife's like, "Hey, reach out to Eric," and I was like, "It's a good idea." And I'm like, "Hey, Eric, we know each other a little bit. What kind of bike do I get for triathlon?" And he's like, "Oh, here's the the intro to biking, tri bikes, road bikes, and all of this." And so I was like, okay, cool. Like I have someone who is a civilian and they're helping me understand how to get into the sport that I want to do that I don't know how to do. And so he helped me get into kind of a training plan a little bit. And eventually I completed the triathlon. And after my first sprint, which is this, it was a super sprint. So 400-meter swim, a 13-mile bike, and then a 5K. So after that, he looks at me, or he calls me and says, "Hey, what do you think about a nonprofit? Like with our relationship, what we just did. My team, his cycling team, was looking to rebrand for a cause, and he's passionate, a lot of military in his family, and was passionate about veterans, and saw me healing through it. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, let's do that." So really, it was born out of my own need to save myself and create things that would remove a barrier to an expensive sport that was ultimately really healthy for me. So it was a necessity. It was my necessity that we created this nonprofit. And then through the next, 3 years, we really developed the business side of it and have helped several, veterans do the same thing I've done. And it was ultimately realizing that civilians and veterans need to come together, understand how to support one another, and understand how to be supported and how to model that for other people.
So with creating the nonprofit project Echelon, what's been the best moment so far, or moments that you've had with the nonprofit, and how long has it been out for?
Yeah, 3 years, and we've had a lot of good memories. We've had it's been a labor of love for sure. But honestly, I could say some ones that were selfish to me in the sense of completing my first Ironman. That was an amazing experience that I could be empowered and supported by people to do that. I mean, the entry fee is $750. So if people cared enough about me and I allowed them to care enough to help me pay for this and travel and all of that. And that was a big moment for me. I mean, there's so much wrapped in that moment, but recently, yesterday, was one of the best moments I've had. I mentor veterans, and one of the veterans I'm talking to, he's up in Alaska, and he's telling me how we were the first program that stayed true to their word and actually helped him in a way that none of the other programs that he's been to have done. And so hearing veterans embrace what we're offering and say it's changed them and it's empowered them is like, I get pumped up for that, because that's what we're here to do. And so now that we're actually helping veterans and we're seeing the impact, weeks and months down the road, like every time I get that message, I get super jacked up. And that's been my favorite so far. A lot of cool things, but I have to say that's my favorite.
So how many veterans have you guys had in the program with the Project Echelon?
Well, this year, up to this point, we have helped 54 in different capacities. We have some that just need help getting to a race. So we have, covered entry fees. We've offered some services as far as educational pieces, some training plans. We've also helped, I think, something like 12 really intensively, like weekly contact with elite athletes. Our cycling team, has that function to become a coach to these veterans. And so we've had 12 of those. We just added 2 more, and we're hoping to double that next year. And that would essentially be about 20 veterans in really close contact,
Right.
getting coached, getting trained on a weekly basis, or at least monthly.
Man, that's Eric, man, that's awesome. Commend you guys, you and your team, for helping out so many veterans, and in your community, right? In the triathlon community. Um, so talking about helping out the veterans and some of the best moments you've had. There's has to be in some sort of challenges that you guys have faced, right? What are some of those challenges that you're facing, or that you guys have faced, that you want to share with the audience?
The number one thing that comes to mind is funny to me because I never anticipated it being the problem, and that was, I have this money and I want to help you, and nobody wants help. It's like, we did all this work to raise this money and nobody wants it. Then people that would get help be like, oh, I don't want it. Just help me with coaching and stuff. And I'm like, did we need to make the nonprofit? Like, what did we do this morning? we've crested that, so we have some programs in place, but that was the first wall we hit. We're like, what the heck? How do we rebrand this? And so we really focused on becoming a more people-centric organization where it's about the relationship, and if we don't raise the money, it's okay. We created a grant program for, $300 goes to the veteran to get race kits, gear for training and things of that nature, nutrition, just to kind of help them give a boost, race entry fees, whatever they want to use that for. But that was the biggest, hurdle. And then it becomes as someone told me, I have business mentors and athletic mentors, and I have people who are much smarter than me helping me understand how to navigate this stuff. And so we, had board members that were gracious enough to come along in the early stages, and then we hit and picked up the speed where now one meeting a quarter is not enough for board meetings. We need to go monthly, and so we had to get the right culture built. And the culture that we wanted was people who really are passionate, who are passionate about sharing our vision, about sharing our mission within their own social networks, and investing their own skill sets and proficiencies to help us become very strong where we are very weak. My goal was not to become strong at everything, but to say, hey, let's do this together, and you're awesome at this, so you do that, and I'm awesome at this, so I'm going to do that. And so it was restructuring that. And I say that to say it wasn't about like all this effort to go out and do it. The hard thing was being patient enough to trust the process and do what you're doing, stay in your lane, do it well, and trust that people are going to bite onto it because what we're offering is different, and they're going to see that value and want to be involved in it. So it was the patience. Have 2 dudes who are super eager about making a difference and realizing that humble beginnings don't mean failure. Sometimes the humble beginning allows it to become sustainable. So it was learning those lessons and just stepping back. That was so hard for me to do.
It's awesome message, man. Guys, when you're starting out, you got to stay humble. You're going to have failures, and no matter what you do, whether you're doing a nonprofit, building a business, you're going to have those failures, but you got to stay humble and you got to stay consistent, and, try to find ways where you can improve upon, whatever you're doing with whether that be nonprofit or for-profit businesses. So Eric, just talking about Project Echelon, where can we find out more about this organization, and what's one advice you'd give maybe one of our audiences interested in, trying out a triathlon or whatnot? What's one advice that you'd give them?
Well, first, you can find our website, www.projectechelon.org. So that's projectechelon.org. We're on Facebook at the same. And you can also, we have a community. If you want to get in to learn and ask questions, just search at the Echelon, and we request to join. We'll bring you in. We're doing some special teachings about different sport specific aspects, as well as emotional discovery and all of this, special content that you won't find on my podcast, which is The Art of Endurance. First, I'm actually starting a series where we break down triathlon, and that'll go live next week on my podcast, where we take
Awesome.
the nutrition aspect, we take the transition within triathlon, what to pack, why you need what you need, and open water swimming. So there's so much to know about it. But the biggest piece of advice I have to give for triathlon, and it was the same advice I had to take, was to just sign up and give yourself at least 6 months and start small. If you're not an active athlete like I wasn't, I mean, in the military, I was running 7-minute miles. By the time I started triathlon, I was running 13 for 1 mile and feeling like death was knocking at my door. So it took me time to regain it. Apparently, drugs and alcohol are not a good bedmate for continued
Got a good
athletic
mix.
prowess. And so it's just accept where you are and accept that the goal isn't to stand on the podium. It's just to cross the finish line. And again, it's humility. It's to humble yourself, to sign up so you have a goal saying, I'm going to do this. And if I don't train, then I'm going to show up and have a miserable time. So it's be patient, set yourself up so that you love it, learn about the sport, come to my podcast. Our organization, we have lots of teaching and tools that can help you kind of demystify the sport. But the number one thing is just sign up for it, give yourself at least 6 months, and then start training. You can find free training plans online if you want. It's not the ultimate way to go, but it's free. And beyond that, the second piece would just be get a coach that can help you with a swim, even if it's 2 visits with a person who's standing on deck at a pool just to critique your form, because learning how to be comfortable in the water will set you up to love the experience, I promise.
Awesome, Eric. So make sure you guys check that out. We'll be dropping down the links to the website on the comments section, and also make sure you guys check out Eric's. What's the podcast, Eric?
It's called The Art of Endurance.
Awesome. Make sure you guys check that out. The Art of Endurance. So Eric, wanted to get your definition on this. What's your definition of being fit, and why is it important to you?
My definition of being fit is having a body and lifestyle and mentality that doesn't inhibit you from doing what you want to do. So there's a whole body positive image in all of this. And if your body is restricting you from playing with your children the way you want to play, from engaging in the activities that you want to engage in, fitness is the path to removing those barriers. So that's why it's so important. I believe that we own 3 things in this life, and that's our mind, our body, and our story. And how we use our mind and our body and what we put into our mind and our body will write our life story. So to write the best life story possible, we have to find ways that we love to move our bodies. And with that, we remove the barriers. So is your body limiting you? Am I uncomfortable getting up off the couch and it hurts my knees? Like, I don't like that. So I started, eating better. I started training a little bit, doing some squats and waking up these muscles. And now I feel so good just getting out of a chair. And I enjoy that. So fitness can be elite or it can be functional. It's whatever you want to be able to achieve, and then working on a path and a trajectory that will get you that thing.
I love it, man. I love the message. So just being fit to do what you want to do, what you love to do, and it's just being there for your loved ones as well too.
Yeah.
Don't forget about them. Also, so Eric, so coming up to the last portion of the interview here. So this is where I asked the 5 fitness facts of our guests. So are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So first question. So what's your favorite workout?
My favorite workout, that's a tie. I love when I'm in a training build for a triathlon. I love the long ride or the trainer bike rides, because I get caught up on my Netflix shows and I can do all the binging that I want that I don't get to do as a family man or that my wife doesn't like. So that's probably my favorite. And then recently I've been enjoying squats, which is something I've hated all of my life. So the fact that I enjoy it it's becoming my favorite for sure.
Hey, bonus question. What's your favorite Netflix original?
Oh my goodness, Netflix original. That's hard. I not Netflix original, I guess. I was gonna say The Blacklist, but that was on cable and now it's Netflix. But oddly enough, what is it called? Insatiable? Have you seen that one?
I'm not. I'm still stuck on Narcos.
Yeah, Insatiable is one that I probably don't want to admit that I like, because it's about like this crazy beauty pageant, like kids beauty pageant, like high school, and it's the psychotic dynamics of really weird relationships, and it's hilarious to me. But yeah, it's and my kids used to watch Hey Jessie on Disney, and it's the lead actress from that now is doing this, so it's cool to see her in a different different role, completely different.
All right. So, what's your least favorite?
My least favorite is specific workout. I don't know what it's called, but it's shoulders, and you lean forward like this with little weights, and then you open and close them like a door hinge or something.
Oh,
And
like the flies.
yeah,
The
it's one that
flies.
I've never done, but I can only do it with like 5 pounds, and I'm like, it reminds me of the military where you're doing shoulder press with nothing, and you're like, I've been doing 200 of these, but everyone's just struggling. So I think that because it makes me feel like so weak, you know.
All right. So, next question. If you had to choose one person you can train with, who would it be and why?
Oh man, who would I train with? I would I would have to say Adam Hill, and he was on the show Quest for Kona with me. He's in California. He's on my podcast a lot. He To train with him would be amazing. Like he coaches me, but to train with him, his philosophical approach to exercise is so synergistic to mine. I just can't imagine if we were on a ride or a run together, you'd have to slow way down because he's so much better than me. But I just couldn't imagine the conversation and the depth that we could go and uncover. So I would love that.
But you want somebody like that, though. You want somebody that's a little, a challenge. And
Mm-hmm. Oh, he would be a challenge.
so the next question: recommend a book for our listeners to read.
I would recommend The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. It's a book that redefines psychology and has really helped me understand shifting my perspective of how I love. And that the book kind of talks about love is defined as the willingness to extend oneself to the spiritual development of another or one's self. So it's not about what love can bring you. It's about how you extend yourself to other things and also self-care. There's so much more in that book, but it really changed the way I approach my own emotional states. So it's a fantastic read.
Awesome. The road less traveled.
Mm-hmm.
And final question: tell us your favorite quote and why.
My favorite quote is from Mary Oliver, and I'm going to butcher it probably, but it goes something like this. Once someone I loved once handed me a box of darkness, and it took time, but in time I realized it too was a gift. And what that means is that we all have trauma in our life. Some we don't look at who has worse trauma, but it's something that was traumatic to you. And you can think of it as like this box that was handed to you. You know, whatever the box is, it's a box of darkness. It happened. We can't change the fact that it happened, but if we let it, it will empower us to help people who were given that same box of darkness. So for me and not my nonprofit, that's what I'm doing is I'm helping soldiers, veterans, Marines, whoever you are, and their families who have been handed the same box of darkness that I was handed, understand how to open it, unpackage it, and let it empower them because things happen and we have to give them a reason because they did happen. We can't erase that. So I love that quote.
That's an awesome quote, man. You can let it empower you, or you can let it, I guess,
Disempower.
motivate you,
Yeah.
disempower you. Yeah. So I got one final question for you, Eric. Um, how can I further help you?
Man, if you can share the message and let people know, if you see someone who is wanting to get involved in sport, we any endurance sport, whether it's running, biking, we've helped people with yoga, we've helped people get into cycling races, whatever it is, athletically, weightlifting, we've helped people do that too. Let them know we exist. Send them our way. Give them the website. Give them the podcast. Just give them some way to look at us and say what they're doing is what I need, or I'll pass. It's just making an option. That's all I can ask for.
Awesome, Eric. And then that's best thing we can do is share the message for those of you guys are doing great things out there. If you guys see them, let us know and bring it to our attention. That way we can share their message and their story as well, and they can in turn help out a lot more people
Mhm.
out there in the world. So Eric, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for being part of the Alliance. And guys, I'll be dropping down the link. Make sure you guys check out that nonprofit Project Echelon, and also check out his podcast. Say that podcast again.
The Art of Endurance.
The Art and Endurance. All right. So once again, thank you guys. Eric, thank you for coming on, and we'll see you guys soon. Until then, keep changing lives.